this will work. So thank you all for joining us. Let's just start with a word of prayer, and then we'll jump right in. Dear God, I want to thank you for everybody that's here, all the coaches that are making a difference in the lives of these kids. And we just want to ask you bless them and bless our time together here this evening as well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I want to share a few things with you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about team spirit, that kind of thing, as well as some programming resources. And just have you guys share a little bit with this too, versus me just talking the whole time. So if you have something that you've done as far as team spirit with your teams, something you've seen that's caught your eye, please feel free to join in with the group. If you're a rookie coach and it's like, what is team spirit? That's okay too. If you're just getting started with it, but just want to get started and share a couple things there. So team spirit is a really important thing. So of course, let me just back up before we get into that and just do a little bit of a review. There are 4 different areas in First LEGO League that we work with. There is the robot game, which of course is the missions, the points in the field. That's a quarter of what you'll be evaluated with, but it's not just the robot game. In addition to the robot game, you'll be evaluated, your team will be evaluated in 3 other areas. One is your robot design, which includes programming, the decisions you made in designing your robot, how you went about iterating, and of course there's a rubric for this, the robot design rubric, and we can show you where those are as a review as well. In addition to that, there's the project that you have available to you, which is an important part of it. This year is about energy. So it's always identifying a problem, designing a solution, and revising and sharing that solution. So those are always the steps. Each year, the problem statement is a little bit different. So remember to double check what that problem statement is. Occasionally we find a team will come to a competition, and if the theme is on energy and they have something about animals that has nothing to do with energy, that's a great topic, but it doesn't meet the criteria. So always double check the criteria statement that is there in I believe that's in the, that would be in the engineering notebook, I believe that is. So just double check that and make sure that you are on point with what you're doing as you're doing that. And there's some great resources there in the engineering notebook for you. So check with that. So that's part of it. Then the other part, the 4th area, is core values. So core values, there are 6 different core values with First. And so those are all important. As part of this, then team spirit becomes part of this. So there's a lot of things you can do just for team spirit wise. So in our FTC tournament, the Gator Bites actually they had somebody wearing an alligator costume, full body alligator costume. And that was a lot of fun. And of course, they were around working the crowd and helping things out. Sometimes teams will have chants. Sometimes they'll wear hats that are the same. T-shirts. We have seen the whole gamut from the full costume to just really simple, just, together, maybe a school shirt. But these are some things that are really important to do. It does a couple things for your team. One is it gives them some unifying. Who are we as an identity as a team? And it's important to start thinking about those things early on and having your teams talk about who you are as a team. And who you're going to be. And if you're in a smaller school and you just have one team, but that's your team, that's who you are and who is your identity. If you have several teams in your school, that's great too, but each team should have its own unique identity as you work with that team. So definitely look at that and take a look at what's there. You can do some on the FTC side. Sometimes they'll have buttons that they'll hand out to people, to other teams. We have had teams come from Saipan who had teams from Saipan. They actually had candies or different things that they gave out to everybody from Saipan. So whatever is unique to your area, there's no one right thing to do there, but there's a lot of different things. So I just want to open it up just a little bit. If you have seen something or done something with your FLL team, or you've seen something done, let's just share what you've seen as far as team spirit goes. Just go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Mel. I'm not sure if you mentioned this already, but I know buttons was a major thing I saw a lot of teams had at this past tournament. And also, my team one year, we did notepads and also we gave out pens to our sponsors and also to other teams when we went to the tournament. Banners are really good too for the teams to show their school spirit and also kind of marketing their school as well. So those are some of the ideas I've seen in past tournaments.
And keep in mind, you don't have to spend a lot of money on this. You can, some teams will go all out and you can tell they spend a lot of money, but really it's not about how extravagant you are or anything like that. It's really about just creating that identity, because at the end of the day, what matters is not because I mean, you can give, and I've seen people give things to the judges and that kind of thing. And that's a great thing to do. But honestly, these judges, they've got a rubric to fill out. And what's going to matter is, have you really shown who you are as a team? Do you have that unity in that? And it's really not about the product. So if you all have hats together, we had a team once that I can't remember the name of what their team name was, but it was a construction motif. And so they all were wearing hard hats on the day of it with their the school logo on the front of their hard hat, and that was they had shirts all the same. And, that's how they spent the day in the tournament. And it wasn't, and the hard hats were cheap hard hats. They weren't anything fancy, but it wasn't about whether being super fancy. It was really about that identity and just having the fun of who they are that day. And of course, sharing that throughout the day. Who else would like to share?
Hey Mel, this is Trevor over here in Oregon.
Yeah.
We always try to use a shirt that's a little nicer. We go with a collared, like a polo style shirt. And it's separate from the school shirt. We do it a little different just because even though we're a small school, only first through eighth and about 40 kids total at most.
Yeah.
But we want to separate the team a little bit and make them feel like they're a little different than the rest of the crew there. So that's why we go with a little different shirt, not just a regular t-shirt, and pick a different color every year to let them individualize it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Trevor, and that says it really well. It's really about just making them feel a little special, and that combination. So even if it's a t-shirt and you have a team t-shirt, can you work with your school administration to say, hey, on certain days, the kids, the robotics kids can come in their t-shirts and maybe jeans instead, or something nice, instead of the other, just to have kind of a special thing, whatever that may happen to be, not just on the day of the tournament. But I love what you're saying about something special leading up to that tournament, to build that identity, because if all you have is the identity on the day of the tournament, it'll be relatively transparent that is only that day. But you really want to build that identity throughout the season as you're building. Thank you. Anybody else?
We create a logo. Each team makes a logo for the t-shirts, and then we'll create our own t-shirt. So that's one way we build community.
Yep. Yeah, logos are great. Something to think about too, and there's not a lot of these things, there's not one right way to do it. So, you just want to look and you can look at on team videos on YouTube. If you first look at First Lego League videos, if you might see the competition, but if you're not really looking at, forget about what the robot's doing. What are the kids doing in it? What are they wearing? What do different teams do? Some teams in First Lego League will keep some teams every year will have a different team name. And the team name might have something to do with the season. It might be the Energizers this year, where, last year it was, the Transport Bots or something like that, and they change their team name. However, there's a growing trend too, where teams will actually keep that same team name from year to year. So it can vary. There's not a right or wrong way to do it, but in Southern California, there's Team Gold, and Team Gold has been around probably for over 15 years. It's transitioned. There's different coaches to it today than there is before, and there were that, and originally, but that they have kept that identity with their team. So there's a couple different ways to do it. There isn't a right or wrong way, but it's really about building that identity. You might think about, as whether it's this year and the years in the future, if you have changed the name from time to time, to think about, hey, what could our team name be going forward, all the time with that. And it might happen to be when we're on the First Tech Challenge side, when I was in Sacramento, we were the Capitals, or we were Capitals Engineering, because the sports team for Sacramento Adventist Academy was the Capitals. So we just kind of played off of that. That's what the kids wanted to do. They made that choice, and they played off of that, and they kept that name every year when we had the team. So they had that identity, and then that identity with the shirts or whatever it is they had carried on from year to year. And we went with, of course, this is a high school, but we went with some little fancier polo shirts and that kind of thing too. But we started out with t-shirts our first year. So, all right. Anybody else? Love the ideas. So finding things to do together, sometimes it's also, whether it's a pizza night or something outside of the norm that you can do. Sometimes it's just some hangout time. What is the aspect of just having fun? We have fun as one of the core values. And so, do you take time just to have fun outside of it? So that's a good question to ask as you're building that community and that team spirit outside of the normal time. All right, any other thoughts or questions relating to team spirit? All right, definitely give it some thought. At the competition, it's great to be known. Chance, if you have parents there, getting them to cheer in the audience, different kinds of things you can do there just to contribute to the spirit of the entire event, as well as the team's enthusiasm and spirit would be great. Let's talk just a little bit about programming resources. I'm going to share my screen. Let me just double check something here. All right, I'm going to share my screen here and just go through a couple different things on the programming resources. So a couple things, of course, if you have sorry about that, if you have the Spike Prime, or in the Spike Prime or the EV3 built into it, depending on which one you have. And the EV3 is still a very good robot to use. I don't know how many of you have EV3s versus Spike Primes, but inside the Spike app, there are a lot of resources, or the Prime app. Now you can see here that while I'm doing this, it says, boy, there's a whole bunch of updates available. And this will update itself as you go forward, as well as the other one, the EV3 one as well. But there's a lot of units in here. Definitely take time to look through the units that you have. There's a lot of tutorials, and that's great. That's what's built into it, and there's a great place to start. But outside that, wrong one, there is outside of that, there's a couple of different websites. Some of the these are 3 of the key ones that are available out there. EV3 lessons. If you haven't been there, there's EV3 lessons for the EV3 and primelessons.org for the Spike Prime. And what I will do is, let's see, there should be a home page here. Let me get to the home page here. I'm going to go ahead and drop these in the chat. I think I will anyway. Give me just a sec here. Pop my chat up, and I'm going to drop these into the chat so you have them available to you. But they're great resources, and I'll just take a quick look at some of this once I drop these in here. So on the Spike then, in here, in addition to just, the basics of, there's a couple things. So first of all, when it comes to, there's word blocks. So if you're using the word blocks here, this has everything from very beginning, and there's a whole bunch of lessons right in here. So the odds are, if you're wanting to know how to do something, you don't have to figure it out from scratch. All you have to do is come into one of these programs and take a look at it. So one of the things that I want to encourage you to take a look at are these good practices here. So what is pseudocode and commenting code? So pseudocode, anybody know what pseudocode is? 3 brownie points for the right answer.
Well, Mel, it's basically it's a way of documenting the goals of the program without actually writing the programming itself. You can diagram it in a flow sheet or actually just write it down as a sentence. What are your goals? What path are you going to be taking to make it happen?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just writing down in English, what is it you want to do in your program without any technical, you're not worried about, you know, all this kind of stuff. What is it you want to do and the steps you want to do? It's thinking through that before you get into any of the coding. Okay, so when I want to go forward, you know, to this marker, and then I want to turn this many degrees approximately, and then you know, even though it's not exactly right, I want to turn to the left to face this way. You're basically going to write that program as you go, just in words, in English, without any coding or coding terminology involved in there. And then, of course, another good practice is commenting your code. Why would commenting code be good? Commenting code is a very good practice, and this is something that you can see. This is a little comment block out here. This is something that the judges will be looking for, is code that is commented. And there's a couple reasons for commenting code. One is you might work on a program right now and then set it aside, and after Christmas you come back and start working on that same program again, and you look at it and you say, man, what were we trying to do at this point in time? I can't remember what it is we were trying to do. Well, it helps you remember it. The other thing that can be an advantage is maybe, you know, Susie started the program, but later on she, you know, went on to something else, and George comes along and wants to finish that program up and get it going. And so he wants to go back and be able to easily tell what it was that the person who started that one was trying to accomplish. So it's a very useful tool. And this kind of shows you how to do your comments, some great practices, very simple materials here on how to do that. But that's something that's very important. So keep that in mind. Those are a couple things that are really important here again. But though, if you want to get into sensors, how to do different kinds of sensors, using sensors is a very important thing. Can you program without sensors? Absolutely. And you can be successful with sensors. But what happens is your judges, when you're looking at your robot design, they're going to look at it and go, okay, did you use sensors? Did you use loops? Did you use decisions? Those are some things that they're going to look at to know whether or not it's just a basic program, or did you do something a little bit more advanced? So this is the time of the season where you want to be making sure that they learn these different resources. And the great thing about this is that you don't have to know how to do this yourself. You can say, all right, guys, today we're going to do repeat blocks. We're going to move into intermediate programming, and I want you to do repeat blocks, and I want you to go through this, and I want you to show me a program with a repeat block, and have them explain it to you and say, why is this a repeat block? You might not know the answer, and that's okay. They'll tell you the answer, and they'll keep themselves straight. And they'll work together to decide, to show you how that is and go through there. So repeat blocks are important. Light blocks and sound blocks really are not important, but the if-then blocks are important. So repeat blocks would be important to know, and if-then blocks would be important to know how to use them. So those are some other things. You can always get an advanced line. There's some other advanced things, but turn the kids loose on this and give them some time to explore and try out some of these things without having to necessarily try it in a competition. They just want to practice it. How does this work? And then they can apply that later on. EV3 will also have a similar, they're structured just a little bit differently here, but you'll have the different kinds of things you have in here for it in similar ways. Logic operations and decision making, that is some of your repeat and loop blocks. So they've gotten a little bit better with this as they go along, but these are these are your other kinds of blocks here. So this is actually the old programming though.
Yeah, it is.
And so I'm like, that doesn't look right. I know they've updated it. I thought they updated anyway. But even if you look at there's a lot of similarities between the EV3 and the new programming language. So if I look at the EV3 programming language, it's going to be very similar. There are some things that are done differently, but the new EV3 classroom is very, very similar to the other one. So yeah, those were not quite the right ones there. We'll just open
Question, we have Robot Inventor. Is that okay that works with the Spike Prime stuff?
Robot Inventor. Is that the Spike Prime Robot Inventor?
It's very similar. It's the same kind of a block, but it's just a tiny bit smaller, but it uses the same programming. Would all this stuff be for that too?
Yes. So with the Robot Inventor is pretty much this. It's very similar, and yes, you can use the Robot Inventor. It should be the same as this. It pretty much is the same. It's a slightly different programming, but this will work for both Spike Prime and Robot Inventor.
Okay.
So I think the Robot Inventor is going away. I don't know that it seems like I heard that they're not going to be continuing making that product, but I think everything's interchangeable between the two, if I remember correctly. It's the same, pretty much the same block. The brick and everything is the same. It's just green instead of yellow. It seems to be anyway. I haven't used them, but yes, people have used the Robot Inventor, and that is legal. You can do that.
Yeah,
and there are other programming languages you can use. You're not restricted to a particular programming language. So there are pure Python. Of course, you can do Python in here as well, but there's other kinds of programming languages that you can get if you want to go full programming on it.
So this, Trevor, again, I wanted to just point out, I've read that, I haven't done this myself, but I have read that on the Robot Inventor brick, if you need to switch over to full Spike Prime programming, because Lego doesn't continue that's a consumer grade product versus the education. You can upgrade the firmware on the Inventor block or brick and make it basically use the Spike Prime pieces or software.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yep. So let's see if this addresses it here. This talks about the differences between the two. So in here, and can you build a competition robot? Yes, you can. And we'll see if we can find some information on that. We'll see if we can find some information on flashing it to an EV3. I'll make a note and see if I can find some information on that. Thank you, Trevor. And share that. There's another website here, EV3 Tutorials, which has some great resources. This goes beyond just the programming, where the other side of it looked just at programming. But here you have different lessons on core values, the project, as well as links to other things here. But there's specific superpowered resources. Now, keep in mind, these are all unofficial resources. So none of this has to do with official. This is not from FIRST. This is from I think the same people that make the EV3 lessons and Prime lessons. But there's some resources here that you may find useful that you can take advantage of just to expand what you're doing. And of course, always is the First Lego League.org/season. Or just if you go to firstlegoleague.org, you can select the season. And this is, of course, your primary resource for all kinds of things FIRST. This is whatever is in here is official FIRST materials. So if you're looking for the judging rubrics that are being used, this is the place you come for all of that information. And of course, always check your challenge updates, because your challenge updates, this was last updated on October 18. It'll tell you what day it's updated. But anything in the challenge updates override any rules or missions or anything else. So make sure that you're taking a look at that. So this is one page that you want to make sure you're familiar with and you stay up to date with what's on there, especially in the updates there. All right, so it's a lot of resources. Let me just go back to one thing. This isn't about programming, but the other thing is the robot designs in here, and there's same thing on the EV3. But there are a lot of designs in here for building robots. So the basic robot that comes with the kit with the instructions generally is not a really good competition robot. It'll do either the EV3 or the Spike Prime. It'll do the basics, but you want some kind of robot that you can then build off of or expand. So there's some ideas in here, and there's other places you can look at for some different kinds of robots. What these are here, you'll notice in this particular design is that there's a couple gears here. So the idea with this kind of robot would be you would set an attachment over top of this, and that attachment would have gears that would then mesh with this and automatically connect because it kind of set over top of that. That's the kind of design strategy on this particular one. But there's different kinds of robots that you can build. So don't assume that the basic bot with the instructions, especially the basic one on the Spike Prime, is super simple and would not be a good competition robot. So see what kinds of other options you need and how you can build and design some attachments and challenge them to do that. So definitely take a look at that. There's some ideas there and in other locations to build something that's just not what came with the basic kit and the basic instructions, to see what else is there. So that is there. So any other thoughts, suggestions, comments from anybody?
Mel, just for clarification, for this season, for the competition, team can use the EV3 or the Spike Prime.
Correct. Or Robot Inventor. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think technically you could probably use even some of the older ones, but nobody would. Any official Lego one. But yeah, all of them, the EV3, basically they don't sunset them as far as the competition goes. You can still use older kits, and that they're legal. There may come a point where it's like, yeah, I really want to upgrade because there's some features that I can have and some parts that I want in the other one. And some teams say, no, I really like the old one and I want to keep it. And our top team last year used EV3. So you know, it is possible to do quite well with an EV3 with it. So they are good robots.
Is there another website that might give them some ideas for, building the, something rather than the basic, a little bit more advanced for the, to do the missions?
Yeah. So which robot do you have?
Spike.
The Spike. Okay. So but definitely look in here, and the key to these isn't the robot itself. And I don't really like this one a whole lot, but like this one here, the key is what kind of attachments are you going to put on top of this to make it work? And how does this really, because it looks like, oh, that's a really basic robot. But then if you do some attachments, I don't know if anybody else has any websites. I don't know of any particular as far as building goes. We can find some, see if we can do some research on that. That's always the challenge, to have how much are you going to follow somebody's instructions, or how much can you take a basic platform like this and then create your own attachments to go onto that platform. I don't know if you caught what I said about, and I don't know if I was clear, I guess is what I should say here, on what could go over this. Basically, and I'll see if I can find some videos. There's some really cool videos, and if you see things on YouTube, you'll see where they let me just back up just a little bit. One of the challenges that we see a lot of times with beginning teams, and sometimes even more advanced teams, is they will have attachments that are really difficult to put on their robot. And it takes time to put it on. And so they got to pull this piece out, and then they got to move this one, and they got to get this just right, and they got to align it right. And so they'll run one mission, and keep in mind, you have 2.5 minutes for all of your missions. They'll run one mission, and it takes about 20 seconds to run that mission, and then they spend 45 seconds changing from one attachment to another, and how much time, and over half their time is gone. And if it doesn't go well, then it may take a minute for them to get that changed. So the speed of being able to change attachments from one to the other is really critical to success and to be able to score points, because if the more time you're working on the robot and it's not out performing what it's supposed to do, then the less points you're going to make, just because of the math involved. And so you'll see a lot of teams will go with the concept that they'll have a base robot and their attachment that is square. And in this case, if it was mine, it would probably be just slightly bigger than the robot, or it would have some way it would just set right on top of that frame, that exterior square frame, and drop into it. And it would set on top. And when I set it down, the gears I had on that attachment, when I set it down, would automatically mesh with the gears that are pointing upwards on that. So there's no getting it to hook in. All I have to do is take one thing off, set the other thing down, push the button, and it takes off again. And I'm not spending a lot of time fiddling with it. So more than a fancy robot itself, as far as a robot, something like this kind of a concept where you can build attachments to do whatever it is you need to do, which would be very different, that would kind of set down on top of that, would be very easy and quick to change. That's what I would focus on more than the robot itself, is what are the mechanisms, and if you can have a quick change methodology for those mechanisms. So think about the robot as a platform on which you're going to put the attachments and the various things versus the device that actually does the whole thing. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, man. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. So that really makes a big difference for you as you're building. Because I have seen teams, and you know how it is when you're, especially for kids, when you're in your own classroom and there's no pressure, everything goes fine. And when you're under pressure, then every movement, I mean, the kids are nervous and it doesn't go well. And the simpler it can be as far as putting an attachment on, the better.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. Back to the programming. You were
Yes.
mentioning that the judges will look at your program.
Yes. So it would be a good idea. So when you go before the judging, and there's actually a video that first is put out about judging and preparing for judging. But when you go in, I would definitely take your laptop with you, and you might even have a printout of the code.
Okay.
So let's go back to, I'll come back here. Where are my rubrics? It's under judging. Challenge judging. There we go. All right, so here's the rubric. So let's just load these rubrics and take a look at it. So we have core values rubric. And the core values rubric is fairly open, but you have each one of your core values. And, how does your team demonstrate that? And keep in mind, again, this is going to be evaluated throughout the entire day, not just there. And you as a coach can do things that can impact your kids, because it's not just them. I've had coaches impact how their team did on core values. This is the innovation project. So again, in the innovation project, each one of these lines, so here's one line, this will be evaluated. Then this line here will be evaluated. So each of these lines will have information that you're going to do. So let's take a look here at you're going to be evaluated on. So let's take a look at, let's see, this is, robot design. So team had a clear strategy. They improved innovative design, clear work plan, seeking guidance as needed. They developed an effective robot and code solution matching their mission strategy. So the question is you're preparing your kids, and the kids do all of the talking to them. You can't prompt them or do anything in the judging room. But as they're doing that, how are the kids going to communicate to them that they have an effective robot solution matching their game strategy? And of course, do they repeat their test, their code? But with this, then, I mean, as you're doing this, how do they do that? Well, a great way is to be able to have your programming with you, with it, whether it's on a computer, something like that, so they can actually show it to them and let them see what that is. Now, you're not going to spend, keep in mind, you have a very limited time. The kids are going to have very limited time, so you're not going to do an in-depth dive. They're not going to be able to show every single program they have, but what program exemplifies their best work in what they've done, to be able to show that and explain it. So the kids need to be prepared to kind of share and explain to the judges how they do well in each of these. And this is based on rubrics. If educators are familiar with the 1 to 4 concept, 3 is where most people doing really well will do. 4 would be exceptional. And they would have to write in why they were a 4 beyond that. Yeah, so these two here, the create and iterate, that would be a great thing to have some examples of the code. It's not just focused on the coding. There's a lot of other aspects as well, but being able to have the programming for them to see would be valuable.
No, that's one thing I wanted to just add this to Trevor again.
Yeah.
So you can't print your programs from the Spike Prime app, at least not the current version. So what I end up having to help the kids with is creating screenshots using a couple of different options.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you can't print from there, but Windows has a screen capture option in it, and I'm sure the Mac does as well. But built right into Windows now is a screen capture. You can get the fancier stuff too, but yeah, some way to print that out so they can take it and show them what it is. And it doesn't hurt to take a laptop in there as well with that. So it's not as much about leaving it for them to see, because honestly, the judges are going to make the evaluations for the most part right after the team is done. They're going to fill out this rubric immediately afterwards, and probably aren't going to change it a whole lot after that. So it's really about what you do during that time. And we'll get more in depth into the judging process later on as we get closer to it. But yeah, definitely have a way to communicate that to them. But these rubrics you want to be familiar with and review them as you prepare. So there's 4. Remember, we said there's 4 areas. The robot game is 1. Then we have the core values, which is based on this rubric. You have the innovation project, which is based on this rubric. And then you have the robot design that's based on this rubric. So how does your team communicate to the judges that they are accomplished or exceeds in each area? That's the ultimate goal. All right.
And also, Mel, wanted to mention,
Yeah.
I wanted to mention also too that the students, the teams will be in one room being judged on all 3 or 4 areas. So they're not going to a different set of judges each time. They go to that one room, and it's, I think, 30 minutes. They'll be there doing a presentation about the robot design, their core values, and their innovation project. So they don't need to rush or fumble. All of that is just in the same place with the same judges.
Yeah, so if pre-COVID, and this really has nothing to do with COVID, it just happens to do with the timing of it, but pre-COVID, what was it, BC, before COVID, they would go to 3 different judging rooms. They had 10 minutes with core values, 10 minutes of robot design, and 10 minutes with project. Now they have 30 minutes in one judging room, and the flow of that is in your team leader guide. You can see the outline of that, and we will spend some time later on going through that with you. And there's also on the First Lego League YouTube channel this year, there's a video there in preparing for judging, specifically about judging. So I'd definitely encourage you to watch that video. Okay, so Trevor put in the chat there, it says it looks like it should pop up and ask you to update if you plug it in. You want to say that, Trevor?
Yeah, sure. So I was just doing a quick search, and if you are using the Lego Mindstorms Inventor product, everything I read claims that it's the exact same electronics as Spike Prime Hub. So if you just plug in that Inventor Hub while having the Spike Prime application loaded on your PC, and then try to connect to it. It should tell you that, oh, we need to update your firmware, and it'll do it
Okay.
automatically.
Perfect. Okay, and I would suggest, I don't know for sure on this, but I would suggest that you do consider doing that, because I do believe that the Robot Inventor is going to be sunsetted and no longer made by Lego. I think they're just going to one single product going forward. Another little tip, if you know somebody who's considering getting that, until December 31, if you have a team and you order through through your first dashboard, the prices are still before they go up. They've already gone up on Lego Education's website, but you can get them at the previous price still through December 31st. So if you're thinking about buying a second robot and you have the funds to do it, you will save a little money if you do it now. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I did put something else on the chat there. I just noted just 2 days ago that Lego Education announced they're moving to version 3 of the Spike app. And I don't know what all it's going to entail, but there are some webinars that Lego Education is putting out. And I put the link in the chat.
Okay, appreciate that. Yep, they keep updating and making things better. So did they put a date on that update that you saw?
I didn't see one, but I can look.
Okay. All right, it'd be kind of interesting. It's unusual that they would do it in the middle of a first season, but you never know. If it is, hopefully it's been well tested for the upgrade. All right. Any other questions or comments on that? All right, well, those were the big things that we were going to cover tonight. If there's any questions about anything else, we'd be glad to take those as well. We have a few minutes left.
I have a quick question. Are jigs allowed this year?
Yes. I don't know of any change on that. And that's, yeah.
Hey Mel, it's my first time doing this with the kids, and kind of inexperienced and first time
Welcome.
coming. So just quick questions. Where, when is competition?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure you guys answered that, so I apologize for repeating maybe something that.
Where are you located?
Georgia.
Georgia. Okay, so you've got a couple options then. If you go to Adventist Robotics, and I don't know why I've got a blank at the top there, and go to calendar, you will see a list of all of the competitions. So if you're in Georgia, depending on which part of Georgia you're in, there's a couple different ones. We have one in Florida. There is one in Raleigh, North Carolina that Candy works with there directly. And if you want to go north, that's probably too far. There is Mid-Atlantic as well. But probably would be Carolina or Florida, just depending on which one is either works with your schedule or is more convenient distance-wise for you.
In this case, I guess, we stay accommodations. That's all on me in terms like if we want to stay, stuff like that, or.
Correct. Yes, I know in Florida we will have dorm accommodations available. Because it will be at Forest Lake Academy, and they do have dormitories there that are not, they are no longer a boarding school, but they have dormitories that'll be available for lodging for teams for that weekend.
What else I was going to say?
And then under, let me just add to it, and then while you're thinking there, under
like, do I have to register? Yes, specifically for
correct. Under registration, then you would come to First Lego League event registration. You've already registered your team with First, and so you would come here, and this will take you to the event registration, and here's where you would choose the event you want to register, and there you pay for your event registration.
How much is that?
It is, okay, $135 for the team.
What's the amount of kids that can go?
Up to 10 on a team. Yeah.
Okay. And you guys, I mean, do you guys see teams of 10 or not really? Is it like, what's the average?
It can vary. Sometimes we see big teams, sometimes we see so one is not a team, but two is a team. So last year, the top team only had 2 kids on it. We have seen large teams do well. Each one has its advantages and disadvantages. A larger team obviously is more challenging to manage and keep everybody busy and engaged.
Mhm.
It can be done. I've seen it done very successfully though. At the
Mhm.
same time, if you only have two people on the team, that means there's a lot for those 2 people to do. So
Gotcha.
for me, the sweet spot is between 4 to 6, but that's just my opinion. It's not a right or wrong with it. But that's kind of where it works well for me. You get more than that, it's doable. Just the challenges just kind of change as far as how you manage the team and who does what, and keeping everybody engaged and involved in all aspects of the program. Clearly, if you get a bigger team, you're going to have kids that are going to specialize more in the programming. So I mean, I had a kid that didn't really care much about programming the robot, but boy, she really loved the project, and that's what she led out in the project area every year, and she loved that. So there's different ways of managing larger teams, and I've had, I think, up to like 8 on a team. I want to say in First Lego League is probably the biggest that I've run, and that's not because I limited it, just was the way it happened to be. And that we worked well, and they worked well on that. So it just changes. You have to be a lot more, the larger the team you have, the more you need to be intentional about your roles for the kids, and your kind of project-based learning model, and what roles every kid has. But one of the things in the rubrics that they really want to see is the kids are involved in all aspects. So they don't just do one thing. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to be the experts at everything, but how do the kids involved in all the aspects of the program?
Okay. And in terms of accommodation at Forest Lake, do you guys provide, is it just a 1-day thing? We stay one night, the next day we're out, or
Yeah, so we'll probably have typically we do now, if you Candy's team in North Carolina, they do, in addition to the competition, they'll have a Friday Vespers and a Sabbath church service. And what else do you do there, Candy? I mean, man, she and Lafayette go all out. I mean, they have a whole weekend program.
Cool. Yeah, Saturday night Vespers, as well as the social, in addition to a practice on Saturday night, leading into the competition on Sunday.
Now in Florida, I'm not that complicated. In Florida, we'll do probably a Saturday night Vespers with everybody, but we don't. It's just the one day of the event.
The competition is what, on Sunday?
On a Sunday, yeah, and it's all day Sunday. So plan on starting about 8 o'clock in the morning, and depending on the size of the event, you'll be out by between 4 to 6 in the afternoon.
And then
if you get out at 3, you're doing really well.
And so teams usually show up what, Saturday, Friday night?
Yeah, usually they'll travel. A lot of times like if you were coming to Florida, for example, a lot of teams will travel in on Friday. Sometimes they'll come in even earlier than that, depending on what they want to do, and do some field trip things. Our championship, the top teams from each of the competitions will have the opportunity to be at the championship, which is the first weekend in May, first Sunday in May, at Forest Lake Academy again. And we have teams coming from all over the country. So they'll often come in those cases. They may come in several days ahead, or maybe come in on Friday. They'll do something together as a team. That could be they'll go to the beach. There's parks in the area. There's just so many things people like to do, in this area, rather than just, doing something that we have programmed for you. They'll do something, and then they'll come to the competition, and then they might spend a day or two and do something fun afterwards as well. And you could do the same thing in Carolinas or any other location. Yes, you can come in for the day, for the weekend. Depending on your travel, sometimes they just come for the day. There's no requirement that you have to be there anything other than the day of the tournament. We provide a lot of sites will provide other activities. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, depending on what the venue does and what they have available. But a lot of times it's just, it's the day of the tournament, and they'll provide that day. That's the basics that's required. Now, what Candy and they do in Texas, Yeah, Griffin, Texas goes all out on his. It's a whole weekend program in addition to the competition, but those are two, the weekend program is a separate from the competition. So what the competition is a first program, which is not a religious denominational program or anything like that. I mean, it's clearly run by us, but it's a first program. And then the other things are separate from that.
And in terms of do we have to pay something to Forest Lake, or what's the?
Yeah, so for that, there is a fee for it. I can't remember what it is right off. And I think for them, you have to supply your own bedding with that as well, which if you're driving in is challenging. They have a fee. I think you can rent bedding from them, but we'll get you information on that. I want to say it's $10 a student per night. That's what I want to say it is, and does not include any meals.
Okay. Good to know. Candy, is there a way, because, I don't know, we might decide Carolina, we might decide Florida.
So
I'll put my email in the chat for you.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Yep. Any other questions?
Hello, can you hear me?
Did you go already into like the innovation project? We haven't done anything with the innovation. Like we built the robot, we did a little programming, but
we have not talked about the innovation project. The best thing I can tell you, just in short, is take a look at the engineering notebook. Two things: we'll make sure you look at the page the full page that explains an engineering project. Then the other thing to do is in 4 places throughout the engineering notebook, there's things called project sparks. Those are great idea starters for getting them going. And then of course, go back to your rubric. And are you following the rubric?
What, can you say that project what?
Project sparks.
All of that is in the engineering.
Correct. The project sparks are questions to ask you can ask the kids to get them thinking about ideas for what their project could be. The projects can be very wide varying. So.
Okay. And that's like in terms, I'll look into it.
Yeah,
I'll look into it so that way, and I'll have more questions probably, but yeah, it's better if I look into it.
Absolutely. And we'll spend some time on that. Maybe the next one, I'll have to go back and look at the schedule. Let me just stop sharing my screen here. We'll take a look at that. Was there another question?
Yeah, my name's Tom. I'm in Manchester, Kentucky. So, and it's kind of like along the lines with the innovation project. Like I actually had our local electric company come out and actually teach a class for the day for cool. On the different aspects of power and energy and stuff like that. They were actually so impressed with they wanted to send their CEO out to see what our kids are doing and whatnot. So just a thought for others that, don't just try to do this yourself, try to partner with it. Cause I still have no clue what I'm doing with any of this. And so, but I've built a lot of relationships in the community for the past several years. And so this is just one we thought that would be a great thing. And so we asked them, what are the biggest, energy needs in our area from your standpoint, and they were able to kind of help us a little bit with, at least a starting place for the innovation project. But I can't find a lot outside of the engineering notebook, and that's got some questions and stuff. But like, what are like the actual, like the rules with it? Like we've built like something that kind of simulates, like, because we're looking at the balance. One of the biggest energy is balancing cost effectiveness with energy and trying to balance those things out. And so the kids actually built like a scale that shows that kind of sounds a balancing thing, but are they supposed to actually interact with this during like the actual Lego game itself, or are they just explaining what the project is and what they're trying to do, and they build a small model to represent that? Or
so a model isn't so the one of the things that's always challenging with the innovation project is there isn't a single way to do that. And I'm looking for something here while I'm doing this as well. So it's fairly wide open on what you can do. Sometimes it'll be a model. Clearly, if you can have something that they can see and do. Sometimes it'll be a skit about things. The one thing, always make sure so I remember last season, I was observing in one of the judging rooms, and I saw a team, they had it was kind of a cool idea, but their time they had, so you have 5 minutes to present your idea to the judges, your innovation project. and they spent most of the time talking about how they came up with the problem, and they spent very little time on the solution. So they had a great problem statement, but they didn't say, hey, here's what we're doing. So kind of
Okay.
managing that. So looking at the rubrics would be really important.
Okay. Well, that helps out a lot, because we actually have the CEO coming back, and the kids are going to explain what their solution to the problem is, and kind of what the idea they came up with for that one. And so that'll be their first chance to present it, as they're actually presenting it to the CEO of our electric company here. That covers like 17 states. So,
and that's
counties.
it. And yeah, and definitely. And Tom, I just want to affirm you, and for those of you that are listening in, that especially in this particular one, is so easy. It's just so easy to do, because there's so many energy companies all around us, whether it's solar power energy companies, whether it's electric power. There's so many different companies in the area that are dealing with power, that it's really easy to do a field trip or have them come into your school. You know, do you have hydro dams in your area? Do you have different kinds of, transmission? Who knows what kinds of things you have that you could do, and actually talking to them. And I love the idea of asking them, okay, so what are the problems you're facing? And how are you gonna solve this problem? So let me just go back really quick to in answering this question, because it's a great one. I'm going to bring up, give me just a sec here. So let me share my screen again. So this is from this is the engineering notebook, and let me zoom out just a little bit here. So this page right here is super important. So here, this is the outline of what needs to happen. So this is kind of your guidebook for everything. So first part right here, identify a specific problem related to improving your energy journey. So in an energy journey is where the energy comes from and how it's distributed, stored, and used. So right there, this right here is the question you have to answer. So identify a specific problem. Now that within that, it's very, very broad, but are you identifying a problem related to improving your energy journey? Then you research your problem and a solution idea, and doing field trips or having people come in and talk to it is a great thing to do. Design and create a solution that could improve the energy journey. So you identify a problem, research it, then share your ideas and collect feedback, and iterate on your solution ideas. So, the idea of yeah, absolutely, having the CEO come in and, hey, this is what we came up with, and does this work? And they'll be like, oh, this really works, but man, if you could change that, that would be really good. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, we'll change that. That's gold right there. And then communicate your solution with a live presentation at an event. So have some way to share that, prepare a presentation that explains your innovation project and impact on others. Make sure your whole team is involved in sharing your progress. So this would be, of course, if we're talking about an event, this would be also at the competition event. But definitely there's other places you can share it as well. But this idea of sharing the ideas and getting feedback on it is super critical to it. So right there, those are the steps. Your project, does it have to have a model? No. Can it have a model? Absolutely. It just depends on what your particular solution may happen to be and how can you best communicate it. Like I say, we've seen skits done, we've seen models, we've seen just really, explanation, but you want to capture the judges. Part of it is you want to have a solution that's really good, but the other part is you want to capture the imagination and the hearts of the judges, and what they do. So I remember one of our judges once this last year was like, oh, this team, what they did, they put me in tears because they were so good at what they did. It's like, okay, they just got that judge's heart, because of what they did. And I don't think it was anything emotional. It's just they were really thorough in what they did, and they captured the idea of what FIRST was all about. And that's really what this whole thing is about, is teaching them to be innovators, and not just reflectors of men's thoughts, to coin it, to steal a phrase. there. You know, that's the journey. So right there, and then if you jump back to here, if you come back to the rubric and take a look at that. And you know, when you look at the robot design, look at this, the innovation project, and each one of these ideas, and keep in mind, identify has two different lines, parts to it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 different areas, and you want to make sure that each one of these, you want to be a 3 or 4. That's your ultimate
So
goal.
in terms of defining a problem, is defining a problem in terms of energy in it, that's a very broad thing. Like, but they kind of define that problem, and it can be in any aspect in terms of energy, correct?
Any aspect of improving your energy journey. And an energy journey is where energy comes from and how it is distributed, stored, and used. So it is very broad, yes, within that. You can go a lot of different directions.
All right. Well, thank you, man. That answers that question. The other question I have, and I guess I kind of think you touched on this tonight, because we haven't been to the competition. We did it last year, but the kids just, you know, they were still doing the very basic stuff, and you know, because of our own scheduling, not getting a lot of help, they weren't as prepared for it, and they weren't ready for it. But so the 2.5 minutes they have, that's to do as many of the missions as possible to get as many points as possible. Then, or how does that actually work as far as the robot game is concerned?
Yeah, so as far as great question. As far as a robot game is concerned, they have 2.5. So there's 3 rounds. Each round they'll have 2.5 minutes. Within that 2.5 minutes, from the time they say go, the robot can go out and accomplish missions as often as it needs to. Now there's this year there's 2 homes or 2 launch areas. So keep in mind, there's some unique rules about how that works this year. So take a look at what that is. If you've been there before, if you've done this before, just note that there are 2 home areas, and there's some changes to how that is this year.
And they can interchange from home area?
I think they have to alternate back and forth. Don't quote me on it. I think they have to alternate back and forth. Take a look at the rule book on that one. So you know, they has to start in the launch area. They press the button, or they start the robot going. Then it has to be autonomous on a run, what I call a run going out. It can do one thing. It could do 2, 3, or 4 or 5 things, however many you want to do while it's out there with its attachments on there. Then it can return back to home, and then you can launch it a second time with maybe another attachment, and you can do that. And you have from the time that they say 3, 2, 1 Lego at the beginning, that clock runs for 2.5 minutes. When that buzzer goes at the end, they stop the robot, and then the referees will score the table, the condition of the field at the end of the match. So you can get points, and then your robot can undo those points. It is possible. It does happen. And so you have that 2.5 minutes to do whatever your strategy is. Every team's going to have a different strategy, how they combine missions on a run. Maybe they'll do 1 and 4, and somebody else will do 2 and 7, or whatever it may be, as far as the different missions that are out there. That's really up to you and how you want to approach that and get that done. And so, of course, some are dependent. One mission may be dependent on another mission being done. And then, so there's 3 rounds. You get the best score out of the 3. So if everything goes crazy on one round and nothing works, that's okay. There's 2 more. And then whichever is your best score out of those 3 is what you get.
And so and then it adds all the points together. Then because I haven't been to one of these competitions, what's like an average, you know, just like a thing for us to try to shoot for in doing this, like as far as points? I know they're based on like scales of 5 from what I've seen, and each one can get like anywhere between 15 and like 25 points from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's really hard to say on that, because the game's different every year, so the numbers change. Sometimes you know, teams will easily get between 50 to 100 points, 50 to 100 points. I haven't really looked at this year's game from that perspective as far as number of points go. I think last year our top teams were 250 point range. I want to say, I can't remember right off, but it can change from year to year just by how the point structure is. So
Gotcha.
it's really hard to say, oh yeah, you should be here. Yeah,
But
really, it's about doing well.
But it's about completing probably 4 to 5 missions at least.
At least, yes. I would
Okay,
say
so that's
so. The more you can do, the better. And combining multiple missions to do in one run, and definitely take a look. There's stuff out on YouTube of teams doing stuff. Now, just because on YouTube doesn't mean that they're following the rules and how they do it. They may show this great strategy, but it's like, yeah, that doesn't fit. That's not legal. It's a great, cool idea, but it might not be legal. But you can get some different ideas, and there are some super, advanced teams. And the challenge with sending your kids there is sometimes your kids can just get intimidated by that versus inspired.
Okay,
and then they dwell on that.
So since there are 2 launch areas, do you only launch one robot at a time, or if your team has more than one robot, can you have more than one robot in the field?
You may only have one robot.
Okay.
Period.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That is like I've read through all the stuff, but yeah,
at a match you can only have one robot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all right, that helps out a lot, because I feel like we're doing a lot better this year. Like the kids are grasping the concepts a lot better this year. I've got some of the same kids from last year. Actually, my best kids are the 2 kids that were too young to do it last year, and we let them do it anyway. And so there is like the youngest that we're supposed to, they're 4th grade or whatever. But it's been interesting. But this is the first meeting I've actually been able to go to that I had actually put a reminder in my calendar so I wouldn't forget to come.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm appreciate everybody being here. Like I say, we'll post this recording. We're going a little long, and that's okay. We'll post this recording on our YouTube channel as well. So take a look at the robot game rule book, and that's what I'm looking at here in a format.
Hey, Mel, is there a website to buy tables?
No.
No. Okay.
I know there is not.
The table is really easy to build. I mean, it's literally just a standard sheet of plywood with 2x4s around the edge as the measurements on it is all it ends up becoming. I built it in a day and a half.
The 2x3s is what I would recommend versus 2x4s.
Well, yeah. That's right. I'm sorry.
They used to be 2x4s. So this is from the firstlegoleague.org site here. Here's the table building instructions, and is exactly right. It's very simple. It's just 2x3s around the outside, and you can put some bracing underneath. In fact, maybe they don't even include bracing underneath.
We just put two. What I did is I just bought 2 sawhorses and cut off 6 inches off the bottom of the legs.
Yeah,
to get the height, because I got shorter kids.
They used to have 2x3s crosswise, underneath here, but they don't even have that. And what is there's a 4x8.
Yeah, and I used a 3/4 inch piece of plywood because I wanted to make sure it was sturdy. So it really was not hard to build.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is I would suggest a 3/4 inch just to make sure it's sturdy and doesn't have flex to it, and get good grade stuff. So I know in my experience, check it out, but Home Depot, I think, has better quality 2x3s than Lowe's does, for example. Make sure you don't have a lot of knots in your 2x3. Make sure they're really clean and solid. Same thing for your plywood. Make sure you get a decent grade of plywood. Don't get the cheapest. Don't go cheaper and regret it, because if your surface is not really smooth and the robot hits a little dip in your plywood, okay, that's going to affect the consistency of your robot. So, and this will be something you'll keep for a while. So spending a few extra bucks on good quality lumber is well worth it.
Yeah, we did a birchwood instead of particle type board. So, and I sanded it multiple times with multiple different grits and all that kind of stuff. That's why it took me a day and a half, 2 days to do it, is because I did multiple sandings on it.
Yeah. That's taking a little bit of time. And if you have somebody with any carpentry skills at all, it's very simple to build.
Can I ask you a question in that regard? So a few years ago, the school I'm at, they had a team, and the person that did it is gone. And so I'm trying to work with some of the students this year. But the table they have is actually a folding. They made one where it could fold in half, but when it lays down, it doesn't lay completely flat. And so I was just curious, do you feel like that? Obviously, I know it's not going to be completely consistent, but do you feel like that's enough of a problem that a new table is needed? I mean, how much do you think that would impact the game?
I would be very hesitant to use that. I have seen it used. But I just know that any inconsistencies in the table can impact the consistency of the robot performance. Now I know teams that have said, oh yeah, but it works for us and we don't have space, so we just have to do this. And hey, you know, it's everybody has the opportunity to do what they like. But the competition table won't have that same dip in it, that same
Okay, thank you.
inconsistency. So
Yeah,
if you're programming for an inconsistency that's not going to be there, you want your table to be as predictable and the same as what the competition table will be when you go to compete as possible. So the more
Thank
you
you.
can be consistent, I think the less frustrations your team will have as to, well, there's always going to be that worked at home and it didn't work here. Why? You know, well, that's just because you're nervous and you're not relaxed. You know, having the teams relaxed at the tournament is a really important thing, really hard to do. But definitely, you know, I just want to say something too here. If this is your first year and you're getting started, I know one of the common things that I hear as we get toward tournament time is, you know, I'm just not ready. And I just want to say, you know, you're never going to be ready, especially your first year. The only way to have a rookie year is to have a rookie year. And I would guess that anybody who's gone through it would probably tell you the same thing. I think most people would, and that is that you and the kids learn by going through the process. So I can talk to you about the tournaments like, but until you actually go and experience it, it's like you don't quite get it completely. And then once you experience it, not only have you experienced the tournament, but you've also learned and grown from presentation skills. And I know as a coach, I learned things every year I was a coach. I still have things I can learn as a coach. You never stop learning. There's things I pick up every year, and this is year 19 for me doing First Lego League. So it's been a few years. But keep learning, keep growing, keep doing, definitely go and participate, you know, have something to show, but it's not about what you win, it's about what you learn. Whether or not you win anything at the tournament. And if you go as a coach and say, you know what, kids, we're going to go and we're going to have a good time. We're going to enjoy this. If we win something, it's icing on the cake, but we're going to go to learn. And you have that attitude and you transmit that attitude to your team members and your kids, they're going to pick up on that. And they're going to go, hey, we're going to go and have a good time. And you might go and walk away with something you never expected to walk away with at the end, you know? So, but it's really just about what you're going to learn in the process, not about whether or not you win. I mean, winning is great. We all like to win. We're not going to discount that, but what we learn is more important than what we win.
Thanks for those words, man. It's very encouraging.
Yeah. No, you will have your discouraging times, and that's okay.
Mhm.
We all have those. So yeah, definitely keep the courage up, and you know, focus on the positives and what you will learn, because you will learn a lot from it, no matter where you are at. So all right, any other questions or comments?
There any place to get a second mat to go on the board to have two teams working on it at the same time?
Do you have two teams?
No, one team, but instead of them waiting for the table to be available.
Yeah, so I don't think so. So the only place you can order the challenge sets from is the first dashboard. As a registered team, you can't get it if you don't register a team.
I see. Okay.
It's the only place you can get it, and I think you're only allowed to buy one per team. You don't have to have one for each team. So if you have two teams, they could both share the same mat, the same challenge set.
Hey Mel, I got the Spike, you know, the robot, and then I got the expansion set. With the expansion set, I mean, is that more than enough for them to like do the attachments and stuff like that to compete and stuff?
Yeah, and keep in mind, they can use any unmodified, with a couple exceptions, they can use any unmodified Lego piece. So kids can bring Lego pieces from home.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it's not about the kit's the great. You can do a lot with that kit. But they can bring any unmodified. You can use with you can't use pullback motors and a few things like that. But for the most part, any unmodified Lego piece you can use is legal.
Okay.
So when you're done with your challenge set for this year, you'll have a lot of spare parts for next year for your robot. Hang on to those. Some aren't going to be that useful, but others will be very useful as other additional pieces. All right, anything else?
When's our next meeting now?
So we are going to do a meeting on the second Sunday of every month. So the meeting invite link I sent out is a recurring meeting.
Oh, okay.
So it should be, let me just double check. This should be the second Sunday of the month, right? Yeah, so it'll be the second Sunday of every month that we'll do it on at this time. All right, well, thank you all very much. I'm going to go ahead and stop.